Frankly, I believe that we needed Donald Trump to win, not just as a country, frankly, as a world. When he was in office, there was a lot more stability around the world. I don't believe that it was the last election of the world. And I don't know if I believe that far, but it definitely would have made life more difficult and untenable and not enjoyable. But why should I vote for Trump? You're not just voting for Trump. You're voting for Elon Musk. You're voting for RFK. RFK cares about the environment. He cares about our earth. He cares about our planet. And he cares about your health and your children's health more than I think any other public person on the planet right now.
You saw the Democratic Party and their budget and the circus of celebrities and people that they had there, and people with hundreds of millions of followers, across all their social media to local celebrities. Everybody was on stage, everybody was there, everybody was celebrating, everybody was pushing an agenda. But it didn't affect the American public. We see that clearly. It didn't affect the American, very clearly. I mean, look at the difference, right? But Elon Musk made a difference. You know why? I respect somebody who puts his money, his life, his effort on the line into what he believes in, and he does not shift with the momentum or with the hypocrisy. I think part of what happened is they thought bringing all these big fancy names is going to sway Sam and his family to be like, oh, my favorite artist in music is voting for this person, so I'm just going to vote for this person too. No, people have elevated from that. Now, with Elon, the guy performed that word, that effort, that jihad, which is basically believe in what you believe in and go after and put everything into it. He went to battle. If Harris would have won, you know what would have happened to Elon Musk? They were trying to deport him.
Where do you go? His only refuge is Mars, maybe. Yeah.
Welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues. I'm your host, Ali Horiat. My goal in this program is to educate our audience about various global issues and how we can help. Today, it's probably the biggest issue of the year, the American election. And my guest today is actually a friend and a like-minded human who believes in respectful dialogue and civil negotiation rooted in logic and research and the truth and science. Sam Knickerbocker is also a host of the podcast, Fuel Your Legacy, your dynamic guru for an affluent legacy. You can harness his unique proven systems to boost your life's value and secure lasting prosperity. As a passionate guide for high achievers, Sam will inspire a thrilling metamorphosis in your finance, faith, family, fitness, health, and fun. So with him, you can prepare to embark on an irresistible journey towards holistic worth, something organic, something real in your life, not purchased, not clouded, not influenced by the market, a true wellness revolution, a true spiritual change in your life. Sam, welcome to Compassiviste Dialogues, and I'm glad to host this because and before you even get involved, I'm going to say this to the audience. I've known Sam for a while, and essentially, I'm watching the elections. I see Trump killing it, and I think to myself, wow, this is actually happening. And one of the first names that came to mind was Sam and other people who I was like, these are the people who can make the differences and the changes this time around, because they now have a platform and they now don't get canceled. They have rights. They have things that they can actually speak for the first time. So I was so excited that, we got in touch and kind of this happened. And this is, just so people know, this is being recorded on the night of the win. So welcome to the show, Sam.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited. Couldn't focus most. I was trying to work and do appointments and stuff, but there's really nothing more important in my mind, not even just about, frankly, I believe that we needed Donald Trump to win as a country and not just as a country, frankly, as a world. I think that when he was in office, there was a lot more stability around the world. So I think from that perspective, there was a little bit of unease. I also recognize that, anybody is going to be able to survive. And so even if Kamala did win, we would have survived. We would have made it through another 4 years. I don't believe that it was the last election of the world. And you're like, I don't know if I believe that far, but it definitely would have made life more difficult and untenable and not enjoyable. And so it's definitely, I was earnestly looking forward to it, and actively, like, everybody I talked to for probably the last week, hey, have you voted? If not, why not? Who are you voting for? Why are you voting for them? I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I'm going to ask you, like, have you thought about why you're going to vote for whoever you're going to vote for? And what are the issues that are important to you that you're voting on? And everybody has their own opinion, but I'd be lying if I wasn't saying I was persuading people to
Mhm.
vote for Trump, even if they didn't vote for other people that I wanted them to, which in Arizona, we have to deal with that a little bit. But man, it's going to be absolutely, I really believe it's going to be a better scenario. So thank you so much, Allie, for jumping on this podcast. I loved our first conversation. Took
Mhm.
me absolutely by surprise. And I loved every part of it. And I'm excited to share another one.
Great. And honestly, I normally start, my episodes with a little background of the guest, and kind of so people understand who they're dealing with here, and what kind of mindset is coming through. But this is kind of like a much bigger event that it's just like overcast you. So you became second factor here, but I
Well,
think you're okay with that too,
I can
because
give you
it's
I
kind of
can
like
give you a
Christmas.
brief one that I think that it
Yes, go ahead.
applies to this. Because
Exactly.
what's fascinating is I'm about maybe 6 months to a year ago, I started getting very emotional anytime I would think about patriotic things. Uh, see an American flag, or think about the Star Spangled Banner or the Pledge of Allegiance, and what I would get emotional about is my children. They're not necessarily, they weren't being raised with that intentional. So believe it or not, I actually sing the Star Spangled Banner to my children when I put them to bed. Like, that is their good night song. I'll sing them like a religious song. I'll sing them Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then I sing the Star Spangled Banner to them because I want them to feel connected to that energy. I grew up seventh of 11 kids, and we were homeschooled, and we had to fight for the right to be homeschooled. In Utah, we would go and we would picket on the state capitol. My dad, he was a midwife, and during that time, they were trying to regulate midwives and say, no, you're
Mm.
not allowed to be a midwife unless you have all these licenses, blah, 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 blah. But humans have been having babies for centuries or longer, like millennia. They've been having babies for forever. And it was always like there was somebody in the community that helped somebody have a baby. They didn't need a license. They learned about the body and they helped that process happen. And my dad was a midwife. I was born at home on my grandma's living room couch, and most of my siblings were born at home. And so this was an important issue to our family, that my dad was able to deliver our babies. We didn't have a lot of money. We couldn't afford medical assistance. So he learned how to do something, and they were trying to take that right away from him. So at a very early age, I was involved in politics, even if it was just showing up at the picket line, wearing the pin saying, I'm a homeschooler. Let me be a homeschooler. In our hometown in Idaho, we moved up there when I was about 9, and we were like the only homeschoolers that lived close to city limits. We were right outside of city limits. And they didn't like that our family, I mean, there's 11 of us, so they didn't like that our family during school hours would run around the town, be riding our bikes around town, not causing trouble. We weren't doing anything wrong, but we were just out. And so they wanted to pass a curfew code that basically said no children allowed on the streets between school hours. And so my mom, again, we got involved with the city council. We used Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, if you've ever seen that movie, as like a backdrop of like, this is what you're trying to do. You're trying to force us underground. You're trying to basically say no children allowed. This is wrong. We have a right to our country. You can't do this. And so from an early age, I was involved in politics. And then most of my homeschooling years was actually spent studying both religion and early American history. Every year that was like one of our core, most people study math, science, whatever. We studied early American history every year, the entire year, from the founding fathers. We would reenact colonial dances. We'd have colonial days. We'd learn all the skills. We would reenact whenever they created the Constitution. It's been too long. I don't remember the name of it, but a constitutional convention. We would reenact a constitutional convention. We went to the Idaho State Capitol and reenacted the Constitutional Convention with name tags of all the people we were going to represent. So like John Adams or Quincy Adams or whatever. We all were playing this character and we had lines and we would reenact it inside the Capitol, like very involved in politics my entire life. And I noticed that we were losing that with my children. And so about a year ago, I started making a much more intentional effort to explain the 4th of July, explain what happened, explain why it's happening, and start teaching just politics to my children. And so that's kind of my backstory of why I'm so excited that you offered to have this call and have this conversation. The day of or the day after that Trump and maybe our country finally got saved for at least another 4 years.
Mm-hmm. And you're absolutely right. I see that too, not just in the US, but in many parts. And I think that's one way that I can tie a little bit of this into capitalism in the sense that not as an economic model, but as the way that the state uses capitalism to influence people to act in the ways they want to. 4th of July is meant to go shop and stock up on fireworks and beers and steaks and go out into some wilderness or park or something with your friends and have that party. It's about how much you spend and that party that you're going to have and all the events that happen on it. There's big games going on. There's so many things that you spend a lot of money on. But I don't see anywhere somebody preparing the children what this is about, and in so many places. Like I was in Canada for half my life, and over there during the time I was there, it kind of became like, religion can be offensive to some people and whatnot, so you can't say Merry Christmas, you have to say Happy Holidays, right? I was like, why? It's Christmas. I can say Merry Christmas. I can say Happy Hanukkah when it's Hanukkah. I can say Happy Thanksgiving when it's. Why do I have to kill history and kind of flatten everything out? But yet you offer a holiday during Christmas. Why do you offer the holiday then? Let's just let the 25th of December be a working day and let's not shop. But why are we keeping the capitalism and just killing people's histories, people's identities? It's like, I'm going to kill Sam's identity, but I'm going to keep what benefits me from Sam's identity. And I found that wrong. And you're saying, you're fighting that.
One of the things, like if you study early American history, then a lot of these men, we call them men, and we pretend like there were these old men who created our country. An old man during that time period, if you made it to 35, 40 years old, you were an old man around that time period. Yeah, some of them made it in their 60s, but most people, there was war, there was famine, there was freezing to death, there was all of that. And so a lot of the average age of these people was like 25 to 35 years old. Like they were young men. They were young people. Imagine 35-year-olds. Think of like, they set the age to become a president. They said, hey, you have to be at least 35 years old to run president. Can you imagine a 35-year-old getting in as president right now? Like their mind was not that people were going to be living till they're 60, 70 years old and we were to have 80-year-olds running for president. Their mindset was like, man, you got to at least be 35 years old, because by the time you were 35 years old, you had a career. You'd been working for almost 20 years because you start working at 12 years old there. Like it was a very different lifestyle. So there's that aspect. But and you
had responsibilities. You raised family. You knew you had a responsibility. You weren't kind of like, falling on the couch on a Tuesday morning and not like having any responsibilities. You had responsibilities at 15 and 18 and 20. And that's so important.
Yeah,
go on.
You're exactly right. No, you're exactly right. And teaching that responsibility, it's hard to maintain a standard of teaching your children responsibility when the world says, oh no, we just, as you mentioned, consume, have it be easy. And then if you just are able to have life be easy, then you don't need to work for it. And so teaching that, but they said, look, the only way you're really going to destroy America is if you can get it to implode on itself and change the value system from itself. So when we go back to this like capitalism versus the meaning of the holidays, I think it's more cynical than that when you look at like why they do it and how communism and socialism have progressed every time. See, this is the thing. We get one, they change history. So that's not helpful that history books are written by these people who want to change history, but also, or eliminate it. But also we have to factor in that people just don't study history. So in the past, the way communism works, if you go to some of these countries, all the buildings are the same color. everything, it's all muted. There's no difference. And so one of the benefits of saying, look, let's just call it happy holidays. It's not that they don't want to take out the capitalism. It's not that they don't want the control and all of that. They just have to do it gradually, and they have to get the public to get there. That was one of the craziest things about COVID is they got your average neighbor to be the one who was going to report on you. Right? This is exactly what the Nazis did. And it's not like, I don't use that word lightly. I'm not just saying this hyperbole. They got people to report if their neighbors were hiding a human being that didn't want to die. Like, it was like, this is how it happens. And so that if you understand that historically, what are these moves happening, then it's a lot easier to actually see without rose-colored glasses what's happening in our country and why today and Trump being elected was so crucial, not because of who he is, but because of, and I've been telling people this, who are like, well, why should I vote for Trump? Don't vote for Trump. I'm not saying vote for Trump. If you don't like him because he's more immoral or whatever, we can have that conversation. But you're not just voting for Trump. You're voting for Elon Musk a little bit, right? You're voting for RFK, who cares about your health more than Trump does, frankly. Like, RFK cares about the environment. He cares about our earth. He cares about our planet. And he cares about your health and your children's health more than I think any other public person on the planet right now. Tulsi Gabbard, also somebody who came from the left-wing side, ran for president against Trump. Like, this happened 8 years ago, and now she's come all the way to say, look, we need to build a consensus of unity and stop looking at the individual and say, what could we do together and move? Trump didn't know that fully when he got into office the first time. I really believe this. Now, how he's built his coalition, like, other countries are more used to a coalition type government. In America, we don't think of coalition governments. We think of Republican or Democrat. But if you go outside of America, almost all other democracies are built off of coalition rather than off of party. So that's an interesting thing. Again, just lack of education for most of Americans. They think it has to be red or blue when it's really coalition.
And you know what? You saying that reminds me of hearing him in the victory speech today versus the last time, and having him say in gratitude that it's a time to heal, right? That's not a rhetoric you heard the first time. The first time it was like, yeah, we won kind of thing. It was that like challenge, and it was that overcoming. It was like a I don't know, winning the league or something in a pro sports league or something. This time it was kind of like, no, we're doing this for the future generations, for our generation. We're doing this for all the people. We have to come together and heal as a country. And, the conversation was very different. And I think, you have that mindset, in bringing the conversation to the next generation. And, you said this before earlier, singing the national anthem to your kids, or bringing them into politics, teaching them a little bit, according to their age. I mean, if we're allowed to teach kids at that age things that they should not even know or they cannot fathom, which they're teaching in your school systems, okay? You homeschool your kids, you may not know this, but in your school systems, they teach things that shouldn't be taught at ages that they do, okay? But yet, they find it wrong to teach them to love their country. Or that's not appropriate for the age. How is not loving, how is not being compassionate, how is not being united, how is not making decisions for the best of your future not appropriate, but choosing something that you still biologically don't even have the capacity to understand appropriate? I don't get that, right? So I like that you bring this up.
On that token, like, I want to continue this process. So this morning I got my camera out and I was like, hey, Declan, he's my oldest, and then Quincy. Paige isn't really old enough to have this conversation, but I was like, hey, why? Like, I know you were excited for Trump to be elected. I know you didn't, like, you were conscious enough you didn't want Kamala Harris to be elected, but like, why? What was your reasoning for that? And the first issue, and again, this comes down to parenting, right? Obviously, he doesn't know how to read fully yet, so he hears this. But here's the other thing as well, guys, that in America, I don't know if this is the same everywhere else, but if you're watching a kid's video on YouTube, if you're watching kids content on video, almost every advertisement, if not every other advertisement, is political advertising, which means the the parties, they're advertising. I don't think they're putting them on there for the children, frankly. I think they're putting them on there to get through to the adults, because the adults aren't watching stuff all the time. They're letting their kids watch so they hear it. But it's still impacting those children. It's still 30, 40 seconds of indoctrination of a certain belief system. So I'm not saying that this is the only place that they heard this from. But the main issue that my son brought up was, abortion. Like the ability to have an abortion or not have an abortion. And, some people are going to say, well, that's a nuanced thing. I don't know if you want to go there. So that was Declan. Then I turned to Quincy and I was like, well, why not have Kamala? And he said, because she's a bad person. And I was like, well, why do you say that she's a bad person? Right? Because a big part of this is learning not just the politics, but learning how to separate the politics from attacking and saying negative things. We still want
propaganda.
to be humans.
Yeah,
the propaganda.
Because
what you're saying and what I love about your mission is the compassion side of it, right? So it's a difference in identities. So then we went through, hey, you have friends that allow their children, or I guess your friends are allowed to watch Bluey. They're allowed to hit their parents sometimes. Like their parents don't discipline them to have them not hit themselves. Okay, like they're allowed to do certain things. And in our house, we have certain rules. How would you feel if every house had to make the same rules? Do you guys want to be able to make the rules in the house, or are you grateful that we as parents make the rules? And they said, no, we actually like that you guys make the rules here. Why? Why do you guys not want to make the rules? Then you could eat all the candy. Well, because we don't really know what's best for us, right? They're conscious of the fact that they need somebody making some different rules for them and guidance that. And then, so we're having this conversation saying, look, Donald Trump has a perspective as far as his campaign. He actually is not fully against abortion, in rare circumstances. But what's more important is that he believes that each house, okay, literally the house in the Congress in each state should be able to set the rules and guidelines around that. That's what Donald Trump believes. Smaller government involvement, more autonomy. Just like we want you to be able to do whatever you want in your bedroom, but in our house, the general part, we make the rules, but in your house, in your bedroom, you can put whatever you want on the walls. You can fold your clothes, not fold your clothes. Your blankets can be everywhere, whatever, but that's your space. So we're teaching this in a household government, and then it translates into a bigger government. So Kamala Harris, what was her position? Well, she thinks that even if mom and dad don't think you should be able to watch Bluey, even if we don't think you should be able to eat candy unfettered or whatever, she thinks that if you decide you want it, we should not be able to disagree with you. And so it's not necessarily she's a bad person. She has a different perspective on life than Donald Trump does. And so what we're voting for is not necessarily the person, whether they're good or bad, but for the perspective and how do we want our country to grow? What type of house do we want to live in? And what type of rules do we want to abide by? And so having that level of conversation, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, they don't really fully comprehend abortion, but they fully comprehend what their bedroom rules versus the house rules versus school rules. Like they understand that because they're living it. And so you can still have these political conversations without even necessarily talking about politics of like candidates and these bigger issues.
And you know what? You brought this whole conversation as an example, which is great because I think people can relate to the family setting. And on that philosophical level of what you're saying, it's really a discussion of freedoms versus coercion, because I don't want to live in a place where, a history of millions of people have gone by to bring democracy, right? Because we all didn't live in democracies. I mean, when America, as this new land, fought for its own independence, it fought against a monarchy, right? You should be a monarchy right now. If we were all, if that war was lost, there'd be a monarchy, and that monarchy would set rules. There'd be no elections. There'd be none of this, right? There'll be none of this freedoms
Right.
rights that you have today. Essentially, you're subjects. But that happened, and from there to today, to see this shift of the state having this influential power, this growing influential power through its means, essentially, to be able to remove the liberties from people in that specific context is an issue. And then to not allow people to speak their mind and kind of grow that inclusively is another issue for me, because I've seen America go from a place where I loved it because I knew places and I've seen places and I've been in places where you don't have freedom of speech. Like when people want to say something about the government or the president or the dictator, they would kind of like hush to each other, even in their own home. Like a husband and
Sure.
wife want to talk
Well,
about the
in Scotland,
dictator.
people are going to prison for
Yes,
stuff they post on social media about
today,
things that's like
yes,
not really hate speech, but just noticing a fact that's happening. Hey,
yeah.
this happened. There was a brawl down the street. I hope everybody's safe. Oh, now you're in prison because that brawl was caused by this ethnicity, and that's considered hate speech. You can't even mention that what's
Right.
happening is happening. It's like,
and
what the
and, and
world?
that and that was happening in the US too. It wasn't far. Cancel
Mhm.
culture is
Sure.
is a real thing, and cancel culture essentially is, if you say anything that we didn't institute and establish to be said and to be promoted, then for some reason you're going to get hit with something, whatever it is. You're going to get hit with something, and that something's going to be really, really bad for you. And so they make an example of two people. Everybody else is going to, Sam and Ali and everybody else is going to just sit down and say, no, I have a family, I can't afford to go through this, so I'm going to just shut up and accept it, right? And that was really what was happening in the US, and people's hands were getting tied essentially. And so now I feel like, and as an outsider, I want to say something here, and especially to the American public. I don't know, when the first time Trump came into power, I didn't see an inquisition type system happen. I didn't see, they're like, he's racist, he's this and he's that. Okay, let us just assume for the conversation Trump is racist. Okay, let's just assume that.
Sure.
What law passed against, like, that promoted that discrimination? Did he say, for example, no Mexicans allowed in restaurants in these areas? Did he say no Mexican kids are allowed? Did he even push for those kind of laws? Like, did he even push and lose for them even? No, he never discriminated. Somebody please comment if you know a discriminatory law. Please comment underneath if you know a discriminatory law that was passed or that was attempted to be passed during Trump's first presidency. And that was, his first shot. This time it's going to be a lot better because, like you said, he's learned about a lot of things. So even during that time, nothing happened. They say Trump doesn't believe in climate change. Trump doesn't care about all those things. Let's just, again, assume he doesn't, right? But what law did Biden pass for climate change that supported climate change? All this rhetoric and talk about climate change in the Democratic Party. Name one law that was reformed in the Biden administration that changed the earth globally or even locally.
Right. And that
Trump
actually
didn't.
changed the earth,
Yeah.
not just reduced America's climate
Exactly.
emissions, but increased China's
That's what I mean.
and Russia's and everything else.
Shifting it over is just a lie that I'm not stupid enough to fall for. Like if you tell me, oh, we reduce the American footprint by 10%, but then you increase Vietnam's footprint by 30%, that's not a decrease because I'm still hurting. I don't want that decrease, right? Don't lie to me.
This is a big problem. I don't know. I don't know a solution, frankly. Like with any major country, how do you allow that country to experience other cultures in a regular way? Like the idea of a foreign exchange student, or the idea of maybe military experience. But even myself, like I am a member of the LDS Church, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and as part of our culture, we go on 2-year missions where we go to sometimes we're just here in America, but sometimes we go to different places. And so I spent 2 years in Scotland and Ireland. And yeah, I learned a little bit of the culture, but frankly, as a member of the church and with a clergy badge and a passport, and they're basically it's like ultimate socialism, right? They take care of your food, your car, your lodging, everything. Your only objective is to talk about Jesus Christ, which, in some ways is good, but you're still in a little bubble. You still have the nicest shoes, the nicest cars, that like you still have everything you need to live as if you were in America almost. Like you're not really in this other culture. You're living in a bubbled system to preach about Jesus Christ. And that's something that I find really, really fascinating, because from the media perspective, if Elon Musk didn't buy Twitter, then I don't know that we would have gotten hardly anywhere. I don't think Trump gets reelected because there's too much of those media strongholds, and they're propagandizing Americans the same or more than what they're propagandizing outside of America, which they're doing their darndest outside of America. And it's the same people who own Sky News in England
Yes.
and Fox and all that. It's all the same owners, right? The global media is the global media. TikTok is owned by China, or they say it's owned by Americans now because that was the law that had to happen. But it's all the same people who are owning the media, and they're controlling this. And so Elon Musk going in as kind of an outsider and saying, look, we're just going to take it all off. Like, we're going to let everything fly. Horrendous, horrible things, we're going to let it all fly. As long as it's not actual inciting of violence,
Mhm.
it's good. And that's unfortunately led to like more lewdness, more inappropriate things on all levels. But it's like, look, if it's not illegal, then it's allowed. And that's the closest thing to experience in another country. But it's hard until you go and actually see somebody in poverty and see how war
Mhm.
affects them and
Mhm.
see buildings
Yep.
that were bombed, see this stuff. I think it's difficult for people to understand that that their freedoms have been encroached on, and
Mhm.
we need to go
Oh, that's
stand
very,
up.
very true. Very true what you're saying. And I lived that in some places that I've been and I've spent months and years in as well. And some places that we're helping right now as well. And sometimes, corporations from that mentality come to us and they're like, oh, I would really invest in Compassiviste if you guys brought some education of climate change to the poverty you're trying to deal with in Tanzania. And I look at them and I say, dude, the guy's trying to make meal till tomorrow. He's trying to eat to be alive by sunrise. What environmentalism are you speaking about? Like the guy has no footprint. He's negative as it is.
Yeah.
He's negative as it is. What are you talking about? Let's talk about you. Did you not drive here to speak with me? Did you not put on these new clothes to come and see me? I smell cologne. These are all footprints. You reduce that and you'll be saving that guy over there. Never mind spending money and investing in Compassiviste. I don't want you to invest. I want you to do that, and stop the hypocrisy, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, and the thing you brought up, Elon Musk, I want to say something. I think Americans and maybe even the globe should start a GoFundMe or a fund somewhere or something, and everybody put $1 in there for every penny that he spent to save the world. Because I'm going to say something, and I was thinking about this all day. There's a word, I'm going to bring in something Eastern now that you speak of other cultures. In the Arabic language, there's a word that is English now as well. It's called jihad.
Mhm.
Jihad is used as this terroristic term, okay, because it implies kind of what happened September 11 and all those things. It kind of got
Sure.
connected to that. But the word actually means effort, right? And in a
Okay.
religious perspective, if you go to the Islamic context of years ago, like less, 1,000 years ago, there was no terrorism involved in that. The concept means put effort in your faith and your belief. So in essence, Compassiviste kind of like follows this mantra that compassion's great, right? Compassion's great. I mean, me and you can walk by, let's just call it LA, Skid Row. We can walk by, see all these people, intense, homeless Americans, intense, homeless. And we could feel bad. We could shed a tear and keep going. That full of compassion, both of us, we're shedding tears, we're hugging each other, and we're walking. Is it going to help that homeless person, though? All that compassion, we could be all Jesus about it. It won't help nothing. But the Jesus model is not to have compassion, in that kind of dormant way. You should have compassion in an active way to kind of come and get involved. I mean, when Jesus came and he saw a woman almost about to get stoned, he could have had compassion. Says, "Oh, this is awful, but this is the world we live in. Poor thing, she's going to get stoned," and essentially walk on and say a prayer and maybe shed a tear and feel bad, and she dies. But he took it upon himself. He wasn't part of the panel of judgment. He took it upon himself to interfere and say, "Hey, I'm going to perform. I'm going to act here. I'm going to put effort, right, to save this woman from the barbarity that is coming." And so he went in and used all of his senses to say, how can I act in a peaceful manner, in the way you come to the table. You always say this, we should have dialogue, right? So
Mhm.
that's something, now I'm learning, maybe that's something, you're learning from your church,
Well,
because you're bringing a truth of, let's have some humanitarianism here and try to resolve the situation without the violence, without me attacking the stoners. And, Jesus could have just pulled a knife and started killing people to save the woman. A lot of things could have happened, but he tried dialogue, he tried reasoning, he tried sense, right? And so
Right.
I think that's what it is. It's so important to recognize that. Now, with Elon, the guy performed that word, that effort, that jihad, which is basically believe in what you believe in and go after and put everything into it. He went to battle. If Harris would have won, what would have happened to Elon Musk? Like they were ready. They were trying to deport him. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, he was done. I mean, Brazil's already had him out with him.
Yeah,
Everybody
exactly.
across the world. There's
right.
Where do you go? Like his only refuge is Mars, maybe.
Yes, you know what I mean?
And try it.
And let me tell you something. This is a person. I mean, you go back about 100 years, you had the guy by the name of Tesla. What did the government do to Tesla? They shut him down because of all the things he was trying to bring to the public, right? They shut him down. And now today, what's happening?
Well, even with Tesla, the question is, was it? And this is a real honest part of it as well. I've done a lot of studying there. And again, there's different perspectives, but it's less likely that it was the government that shut Tesla down, and more likely that it was J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, but the controlling arm of the government.
Yeah,
when I say
it was the controlling model.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
It's the bankers that are in control, though, and I think that's important because we blame the government. But that's one of the unique things about this election with Elon, with RFK, with Trump, and this coalition. It's not really that people voted Republican; they voted anti-establishment versus establishment, because there's people on both sides of the aisle who are like, no, we want status quo, and the opposite of status quo is what we voted for. And so that, I think, it's something that's hard for people to think, because they think Republican, we voted Republican. No, we voted people who do not believe that we should keep doing what we're doing and that we should change and we should get better and we should improve. We're in the 21st century, let's do something better. So I think that's a huge.
There's no reason for the
there.
0.1% of the wealthiest to control a nation. A nation such as the United States of America. I mean, there are nations in the world where they function that way, but these are nations that aren't, they haven't evolved yet on that social scale to be where the United States is as a leading nation, because it's not just about the US, it's global. What impacts you impacts me outside and many other countries as well. So the jubilation you're seeing around the world here, again, it's not Republican. Nobody in the Middle East knows what a Republican is. I mean, in terms of
just that focus, though, Ally. In America, we don't see the jubilee. This is where I was talking about the media is propagandizing. What the media shows us in America, it is that the rest of the world is horrified and they're so scared. They can't imagine what's going to happen. And this is what America gets taught, though. And so I think it's important to recognize they need to get outside of the American news system, because the propaganda that's being fed to America.
You can, but if
you know that you need to,
right? But that's the thing. Like, you have that platform to tell the public. Like, CNN is not news. I'm sorry, it's not news. You know what I mean? So you need to go into the places where you can see the news. I mean, social media. That's what social media is about. It's about libertizing news, right? Liberating news. So essentially, I go on social media and I can see actual people's feeds and actual people's reactions to news, right? And actual people's footage of news. And I see jubilation. And then I go on CNN and I see people holding a candle and saying the world has ended. No, where are you finding these people? Are they actors? Did you pay this, this footage? Like, how is it being created? I don't know. I don't want to go there. But the truth is,
maybe.
The truth is that. But like, if it wasn't for Elon, if it wasn't for the effort he put in, and the other thing I want to say is this. You said it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, and I want to go a step further, and I say it is faith in somebody who can reform the system and bring you the rights that you were promised at birth, okay? And what happened here is you saw the Democratic Party and their budget and the circus of celebrities and people that they had there, and from people with hundreds of millions of followers, across all their social media, to local celebrities. Everybody was on stage, everybody was there, everybody was celebrating, everybody was pushing an agenda. But it didn't affect the American public, right? It didn't affect the American public. We see that clearly. It didn't affect the American, very clearly. I mean, look at the difference, right? But Elon Musk made a difference. You know why? I respect somebody who puts his money, his life, his effort on the line into what he believes in, and he does not shift with the momentum or with the hypocrisy, right? Or with
Right.
the a chance of what they're going to gain. But I really don't trust somebody who'll come and speak about the climate at a forum when they arrive on their own private jet. I know they're coming there for that $2 million paycheck or the $20,000 paycheck. They're not really there for what they believe in. I think part of what happened is they thought bringing all these big fancy names is going to sway Sam and his family to be like, oh, my favorite artist in music is voting for this person, so I'm just going to vote for this person too. No, people have elevated from that. What
Yeah, I
happened
think
over
it
the
probably
last
pushed more
elections
people
away.
away. And
Yes,
I don't think that and these are all cultural things, but they're just as much political at this point. But like I think the Epstein list, I think the P. Diddy list, like
yes,
that stuff, when you recognize who's on the list and who's supporting, and when you have 100% of the people who are supporting are all on the list of the person who's in prison, and it's like, okay, we can make connections now. And I'm not saying that all those people are bad. I'm not saying they're all compromised. I'm not saying that they all did horrible things.
right.
None of that. But when you have a unification around certain people and the stars start to like align, then you say, okay, that's at least something that should be concerning, and it's strange. Whereas the opposite is true on the other anti-establishment side, where it's like these people, they have almost nothing in common except for
Mhm.
their love for the country.
Yes,
Yeah, wild. Like even in the acceptance speech, Trump was like, "Oh, he's going to do so great. RFK is going to do so great with health and all this stuff, but don't touch the oil, man. Don't touch it. Touch the oil, that's mine." Right. So like, hey, there's limits, and they're open about their disagreement. We all get to see that disagreement of
right.
where they disagree. Elon Musk, he totally disagrees. He went on Joe Rogan and talked about how much he disagrees with tariffs and like, I don't really like
Mhm.
this idea, like, and you could really destroy a market because you don't understand that you change one little part. Now we're all screwed. So they're going to have to figure that out. But what is cool is when you find a real leader who is comfortable delegating and comfortable sharing the limelight. Maybe Trump likes to take a little bit of the limelight for himself, but he's comfortable delegating stuff
Mhm.
out to people. And as a
Successfully.
result of that,
Successfully.
say
That's very
again.
important. It's important to say that he delegates successfully, because if you look at his
Yeah,
track history of delegations,
absolutely.
he has successfully delegated tons of real estate
And
projects,
when
tons
he
of
doesn't, he removes the people. Like if
right.
he recognizes, hey, this is no longer a successful person to have there, he don't care if you were there for 2 weeks or 3 years or 40 years. If you're no longer the right delegated person,
Mhm.
he will remove you because he's not thinking about the relationship, the emotion, all of that. He's thinking about who's going to get the job done. And I think that that's an important aspect of the whole landscape that changed.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe that.
and
I
hopefully,
I I I
and
believe that.
this
And
is,
and and I told this to my team today. I said, you know what? I'm going to tell you what we should take from this election. Put aside the differences. Put aside, oh, what's going to happen now? Trump won. Oh, I'm scared. Whatever. Put aside all that propaganda. What we should focus on is what I tried to build in Compassiviste was a compassionate activist who can make change. And what I saw is the poster child for Compassiviste in Elon Musk, because Elon did what we're aspiring to do. Remember when I was speaking with you last time, I said,
Mhm.
my goal is to get 5 million people to give me $1 each every month. And so we can make that change with the power of the wealth that we can bring change with, right? And the movement and the people and the power. This person has that wealth, has the media, has all of the things that Compassiviste is trying to build. And what did he do? He used it exactly the right way. And he got the
Mhm.
results that he wanted. So it is essentially I'm going to take this to every investor now and say, you want to see my model's prototype work? Here, I'll show you.
Sure.
I'll show you, right? You see how it is. So now, what I loved about what happened also is that, you said this earlier, that, it wasn't about politics. It's about values and the vision of the world we want to live in, right? And so I say we're out of hypocrisy now. We're out of oppression. We're out of silencing voices. We're out of all of that. We're in a place of liberty, and with that, two directions show up. And you said this a little earlier about, what Elon Musk did with Twitter: chaos or civil disagreements, right? You choose the directions you want to choose. So from your experience, from your knowledge, from your education, because I know, you think these things through a lot. How does America, from your perspective, and then I'll come in building on that for a more global audience. How does America heal from here, internally, and you know, in terms of going back to a core of healing, forgiving, listening, choosing responsibly, rebuilding human connections and reconnecting with family, with neighbors, and all of that, and beyond. Where do you start?
Yeah.
Where are you starting
It's
today?
It's a great question, and this isn't meant to be a shameless plug or anything, but the reason I do my podcast, the Fuel Your Legacy show, is really to answer that question. Like, I came to it about maybe 3 years ago, that we're just asking bad questions in our society. We're asking questions that create more division rather than create unity. And so, I if you see me interact online or post things on social media, most of what I'm going to post are not opinions, they're questions. They're like, hey, how do we think about this? And I want to have a dialogue. Okay, that's your perspective. That's your perspective. How do we actually create a dialogue around these hard things? And we have to be more curious. We have to be more willing to just ask the question and be okay with whatever somebody's answer is. Even if you don't agree with it, hear them out. Say, okay, interesting. Ask another question. Ask another question. The healing comes from actually learning how much we have in common. My wife, I love her, and she's going through her own personal
You
development
better.
journey. No, well, I mean, in this capacity, she has a bunch of family members who are like, we could never, family members, lifelong friends, and literally these people have been friends since kindergarten, and
Mhm.
it's coming out, man. We're voting for Kamala. We could never vote for anybody who's going to take a woman's right away to choose, or that he's just so rude. He's an immoral man, and all this stuff. And the question I would ask this person is really like, okay, is somebody allowed to change? I mean, that's a question. Like, we attack people as if they're a solid state individual and their perspective, they can't grow. If you don't believe that your neighbor can change their perspective, then the only option is to eliminate them from the equation. Because if they can't change, then the only option is to remove it. But if you have a belief that people can change, people can grow, people are malleable, perspective is based on experience, knowledge is based on experience. When you start to believe something different, then you're able to, okay, interesting. So if I believe that people can change. When we first met, I fully thought, Ali, that you were on some left-wing side. And I was like, this is going to be such an interesting conversation because I think he's some left-wing activist. And I just want to have a conversation with him because I want to know what he believes. And then as we got into it, our terminology is different, right? I would use the word faith from Christianity. I think jihad and faith are the same, right? In my language. But if you go talk to most of Southern Baptists or the
Mm.
South, they don't use the word faith as an action word. They use the word faith as a belief word. Well, the
Belief, yeah.
problem is that even in the Bible, faith wasn't a belief word. It was an action word. If
Yes.
you had faith that you could be healed, Naaman, then go actually bathe yourself 7 times in the River
Mhm.
Jordan. If
Mhm.
you don't have faith, don't do it. But
Faith
faith
is
was an
action.
action word.
Yes.
Faith is
Faith
the
is
effort
action.
in the belief. Exactly.
Exactly.
So for me, I would use faith. But if you don't have faith that somebody can change, then you're not going to put any effort into
Mhm.
helping them change because you don't actually believe that it's possible. And so I think that my
And
wife
wait,
is like,
sorry.
man, I just don't want,
Just
I'll go
let,
for it.
let me jump in there. And just to add to that in one sentence, I think then also from a logic perspective, you're challenging nature because you're challenging social evolution, right? So
Mhm.
you're saying just because a child cannot multiply 20 by 20, they'll never be able to multiply 20 by 20.
Exactly. That's what
You
people
can,
believe. It's
right? That's
crazy.
what people believe. So it's not a matter of I respect your belief. It's a matter of let me educate you at that point. You know what I mean? There's
Well,
a
yeah, I
space.
do know.
There's a space for I respect your belief because our educations are different, and this is like kind of your belief at some point where the physics can't prove it essentially. So if someone comes and talks to me about faith or God, and my belief in a God is different than their belief in, say, the power of the universe at some other entity or something, that's something I'll respect and I'll leave it at that because there's no point. I can't bring God and say, show yourself, right? But if
Right.
they tell me you can't grow, I'll be like, so every child we see now is going to grow up to be ignorant because they can't grow. Explain that to me and I'll believe you. And when they can't, I'll say, well, then either you're stubborn or you're willing to grow.
Mhm.
That
Yeah. Well, and I think that this is important because when we use certain words like discipline, Discipline seems like a harsh word, like jihad has been
Yeah.
bastardized and to sound bad now. Discipline is really about becoming a disciple of a certain belief system. And it's just the process of discipleship is discipline, the process of becoming educated. Well, then we say, okay, well, I'm going to educate you about my belief. Unfortunately, because some of these words get bastardized and they change meaning, literally, if you look at the definition, they're changing the meanings of words. Education, sometimes people feel the word of education, especially coming from us, as like mansplaining, or I'm just going to tell you my opinion. That's what I mean by education, a re-education camp. If you look at Jordan Peterson, he got, the government said, hey, you have to go to this re-education thing to learn about social justice or whatever. So even
and that happened in Canada, okay? That happened in Canada.
Yeah.
Remember that when you think it didn't happen in like, Iraq. It happened in Canada.
No. Yeah. It happened in Canada, and it probably could happen in America under the right circumstances or wrong circumstances. So, but the point is, like, rather than the way I think of it is like, I don't educate people about what I believe necessarily. I mean, I do, but using those words, it puts somebody in a superior and inferior position, because most people think of education, teacher, student, teacher, student. Rather than an educator, I literally believe curiosity is, okay, so you have your experiences. I want to help you discover potentially a new perspective. Is it okay if I share my perspective with you and then see what you discover, what your insight is on that? What do you see from my perspective? So I'm not educating you. I am. That's actually what's happening. But I'm inviting them into a discovery process where they are more excited to learn and grow and get a new perspective. And that starts with you. So go back to the first question, like, how do we heal? It starts with us deciding that it's okay to be curious, us deciding it's okay to share our opinions. And this is you asked, what do we want to talk about? I think it's important to teach our children and ourselves and practice it, that it's okay to have a spine. It's okay to stand up for what you believe in. My wife didn't want to comment on these posts because she's like, well, what if my family never talks to me again? I'm like, when was the last time this family member ever picked up the phone and called you anyways? Yeah, we just saw him at the grandma's funeral, but like, this person doesn't think or care about you anyways. And I'm not saying they don't. If you asked them, they'd say, oh, of course I love Charlie. But they don't think about you. They're not doing anything about you.
And not only that, just on your level, you're starting to develop this hypocrisy, and you're starting to move away from any truth that you can uphold for yourself. So what are you after that? But do you have
argument
faith anymore?
The argument is, well, why should I have to defend my belief? Like, why does it matter to anybody else who I vote for? I'm just going to do me, and they can do them. And if they want to talk about why they have all their crazy beliefs, that's their deal. But I don't need to talk about mine. And the issue with that is, all it takes is for a few, I'm going to label them and categorize them as bad people. I don't necessarily think they're bad people, but a few ideas of the vocal few to control the silent masses. And so if all that people see is that, oh, well, every time I get on social media, the vocal few, maybe 50 to 100,000 people, they're the ones controlling that narrative, because everybody else is like, I'm just going to keep my opinion to myself. Why does it matter what somebody else thinks? Then the other viewers who haven't made up their mind, they only see that the general population, that 100,000 people who are talking, believe this thing. So then they start to adopt that belief because they didn't actually have a choice. They only saw one thing. Choice begins when you actually have contrast. If you don't have contrast, there is no choice yet. Choice comes when you have education, or comes when you're aware of more options. So you don't really have choice if you are only seeing one option. And unfortunately, the world, the media, the education system, the music system, everything, they're actively promoting the option of servitude to an identity, or surrendering all of your morals and values to what somebody else tells you to do, where there's another side of people who say, okay, find your inner God and seek to be, as you say, compassionate, model your life after these individuals, but in the service of others rather than the hedonistic service of self. So like, do you want to serve others or do you want to serve self? And that's kind of a divide, but you have to start deciding that your voice matters and it's worth sharing it. And once you feel comfortable sharing it, then when somebody attacks you for your beliefs, it kind of rolls off your back, because you're like, well, that's what I believe. And no matter what you say about who I am, I know who I am. Unless we know who we are, it's hard to heal this divide of other people. And those of you, myself, I put in this category, who know who I am enough to be willing to share who I am with others, to help them discover who they are. Not to tell them who to be, but to allow them the space to actually discover who they want to be.
And the more you follow, the less you know yourself to start with. And the more you think of serving yourself, the more you're alienating yourself from society. And on the flip side, I think the more you serve the common good, and mind you, capitalism was another thing that was bastardized. And I'll tell you why.
Oh,
You go,
absolutely.
you go read Adam Smith, and his idea of capitalism was to allow competition, to allow the markets so that it serves the common good of society. That is an actual sentence in there, right? And today it's been swapped to you need to literally destroy everybody around you so that you can come out and have a mansion and everybody can be homeless. You know,
Sometimes I think, though, serving the common good, you have these ultra elites that say, well, the common good is the least common denominator, so we should serve and keep people at the least common denominator, which
that wasn't the idea.
So I know, but their definition of
Yeah,
serving the
that's what I
common
mean.
good is
Yeah.
providing a way for the lowest common denominator to stay and bring everybody to the common so that everybody's common,
Right.
rather than saying, hey, how do we, if the goal is uplifting the common,
Right.
and the common good is growth, then we believe that we have to set standards and achievement standards. But if we believe, hey, the common good means we just want everybody to be equal, and there's majority of people are one way, so we need to bring everybody who's higher down.
Right.
They think that is the common good, but that's not. I don't think that's commonly good.
And
I like growth.
Yes, and then the other thing is they use that standardization to kind of make it a synonym of socialism, and then they turn around and they show you socialism is bad. Look at the history of this kind of system or communism, whatever, and this is what that means. You don't want that. You want this individualized system where it focuses on you and it just destroys everything around you, right? And then so like that, using the language and verbiage and everything to kind of motivate people who don't know. And the only way you can get through to people is through keeping them at a stage where they don't have that education. So if they can reach you and not give you that education, again, going back to Elon Musk, something that really caught my eye in the elections was when he said, I'll pay $1 million for the vote, right? And what caught my eye there was the intelligence of this is, look how easily the Democratic Party can be scared and worried because they know there's no faith in what they're pushing in their agenda, not like the party, but in that agenda of that presidency, there was no faith, there was no built on any instrumental values that elections should be decided on, right? As a voter. I mean, when Obama comes on stage and raps Eminem, like, okay, that's cute, but tell me about policy, right? That's cute. Let's do somewhere else. Let's do it at a dinner party and you can put it on YouTube and I'll watch it. But over here, can you take 5 minutes as an ex-president to tell me about policy? And when they know that's not there, they're worried about the million. Why? Because everybody will go and vote, right? Whereas when you have faith, like you said, the word faith, you're going to act on it. $1 million is not going to buy you, right? And so you have spine, like you said. And having those things comes with education, comes with growth. If you don't have growth, you don't grow a spine because a child doesn't have a spine. A child believes what their parents tell them. You tell them it's nighttime when the sun's out, and they believe that because they don't have prior knowledge of what nighttime means. They only build a spine when they're old enough that they've been educated enough. And it's like a tree trunk, right? It becomes a powerful oak tree over years. It doesn't start as a powerful stem. So it's very important. What you said is very important. It's those layers that you grow through. And again, at Compassiviste, exactly like you said, we do that. Compassiviste education, a wholesome education system that we're trying to roll out soon that isn't just teaching kids what the planned systems are. It's actually teaching kids, like you said, to know and read between the lines and go a little deeper so that they can make those informed, better decisions with their lives. And so, a lot of education, honestly, from Elon Musk over the last month. And as an outsider, I want to remind the American public of the blessing that you have in that person. And people should start thinking for a minute before hating and doing all the craziness that they do around him, because this is the person who brought you freedom of payment through PayPal at one point. This is the person who revolutionized your car industry at one point and showed you how one player can go in and disrupt the whole market of sturdy 100-year-old companies of worth billions of dollars and have the dare to dream and do that. This is the person who came in and liberated the power of the media you're talking about, the controlled media, when he took over Twitter and said, I'm going to disrupt this industry too. This is the person who came in and said, I'm going to stand and perform my jihad with the truth. And I'm going to bring that truth to, the end line, to the gold line. He carried that group. You know what I mean? It's kind of like those videos you see of marathon where the guy's like out of breath, he's dying, he's falling, and somebody's behind him and carries him and kind of drags him across the finish line. That was Elon Musk in this election for me, right? And he did that as well. So he went like, this guy needs a medal. This guy needs a medal, not for people ignorant.
Sure, I'll get one.
Yeah, he should. And you know what? I'll be very, very happy again when I see that happen, because like, God bless him, honestly. Thank you for being here. Like on like this happened today. I was so excited. You're so excited. Like, I'm not even American, but I'm excited because I know the impact of good governance. And let me tell you something. People were throwing, the political situations at Trump, kind of saying, oh, if Trump comes, what happens to Gaza and Israel and things like that. And I remind people, it was Trump who created the Abraham Accords, who brought peace. The first Israeli people who came to the UAE, for example, came because Trump made it happen. Before that, you were not allowed. You were not allowed to go to Qatar and UAE and other countries, right, in the Middle East as an Israeli. Now, people have businesses together. They're friends. They travel. They visit. They go to each other's countries. All of that, like that happened because of Trump. So you know what I mean? There was peace. This craziness didn't happen around the world when Trump was there ever at all. And so I'm excited because on a global level, it's making a difference. And let me tell you, when you tell me your media is showing you sadness and stuff like that, please don't believe it, because I'm telling you, and I know you trust when I tell you this, there is jubilation around the world.
That's
last
awesome.
question I have the last question for you.
Go for it.
Where can people reach you, interact with you, get guidance from you, and kind of like just get to know you? Because part of this, our dialogues, is not just educational, it's also networking. What I try to do is I try to bring, 3 different kinds of people on the show. One is I bring in education, with people who will educate or give you a perspective about something that you can learn from. I bring you stories of people, for example, somebody who went, through a horrendous life experience or something to shed light on something that could happen. Veterans, other issues like that, elderly causes, children, whatever. And the third effect is people that I really think need to be raised in the sense of like elevating, their platform in any way that I can. You have a big platform, but if I can add 5 more people to your platform,
sure,
I'm happy, because I really think people can come on and be like, okay, I can learn, I can be helped. I can ask Sam, how did you get to this stage of having your thoughts, yet negotiating with people, having dialogues with people, having compassion, learning to live with empathy, learning to raise your family in that way, and reducing violence, reducing commotion, reducing chaos in your life. And that's part of the spiritual path, right? I mean, that's what I'm trying to build as well. So I want people to reach you. So how do people reach you?
Sure. So these are probably the 3 best places to reach me right now. One, on any podcasting source or platform, you can go listen to the Fuel Your Legacy show. That's probably the best way to consistently hear kind of my thoughts, everything from theological thoughts to science thoughts to lifestyle thoughts, like everything, because I'm interviewing people from all walks of life, just like yourself, and we're having a conversation. And part of that conversation is exploring our own thoughts, our own deep thoughts. So that's the first area. Instagram is where I'm most active. I do post on LinkedIn and Facebook and other stuff, but Instagram is where I'm most active. And so on my Instagram, you can message me. I'll respond to anybody who messages me. There's links in Instagram to my website, samknickerbocker.com. That would be the third place. So either my website, Instagram, which is sam.knickerbocker, or on my podcast, the Fuel Your Legacy show. But I will say this, just because all of this is kind of combining to just a crazy position in the world right now. But I'm actually going to be speaking as part of what's called the Arise Summit on the 19th through the 22nd of November 2024. And it's all about energy healers, science, stem cell, like very in detail. I'm going to be talking mostly about your relationship with money and the value exchange. This is a conversation that's applicable to anyone, anywhere in the world, because although we use the American dollar in America, other people use different currencies. Currency is a store of value and a representation of what value you as a human have created thus far. It's not tied to your worth. So that's where I'm going to be talking about it. But there's 24 other speakers talking about physical, emotional, spiritual, and mental healing, different modalities of healing and just ways of being. I would absolutely, I mean, it's going to be a masterclass. It's free to register, so there's no cost. The link to that is also going to be on my Instagram. So if you go in and click under there with the links, there's going to be 3 links: my website, my podcast, and then a link to that. You can register for free. And you can either watch all of it or some of it and then get the recordings later. But those would be the best 3 places to connect with me, and just join the community. I'm always looking for exciting, intriguing guests to have on my podcast. So if you feel like you'd be a good fit, the way to apply is actually going to my website on the Fuel Your Legacy page, and then you can apply to be a guest. And I'd love to have this engaging conversation, whether you agree with anything I've said, or maybe you completely disagree with everything I've said. I want to talk to you. Like, I'm a deeply curious person, and I just want to create a compassionate conversation and explore ideas together. And I'm not so married to my beliefs that I'm never going to change them. In fact, I'm actively looking for what belief can I change next to help me become a more loving, kind person who's a creator of my heart, my mind, my body, my soul. And I believe personally that I was created and my purpose is to exist in pure light and love. And so, like, any belief I can shed to help me get closer to that identity, I'm in for. So if you feel like you have something to add in my life, please come and add it. Like, don't hold it to yourself. Give it up to me. I'd love it.
We will have all of these links at the bottom of the show as well, also to the summit that he's speaking at. So check that out. Pure love is a term I use as well. Very aligned again. Congratulations for something historic today. I'm sure when we're long and gone, our kids are going to tell this story to their kids, and they're going to remember today. Declan's going to remember today, and it's going to be a story that's going to be told to his children, and he's going to say, Grandpa said this and that. So it's going to be something that will pass on generations. I want to thank you, Sam, for speaking here today on Compassiviste Dialogues and bringing this mindset to people, and to bringing the ideas that we share in pure love and in compassion, and really living that compassivist lifestyle that you do. And to our audience, subscribe to Compassiviste Dialogues channel and share this episode, because I want to kind of promote this compassion coming from all different sides and places. I mean, this is coming from Arizona. This isn't coming from where I am. And to see that it's so aligned, it means a reality, a truth of our awakenings are aligned in that way. We're all reaching the same truth because it's one truth, and we should all share that and grow with it. And thank you for bringing that here today again, in all honesty and all truth and all compassion. And all links to Sam Knickerbocker, his website, his podcast, and everything else is going to be down there. And the summit, make sure you guys check it out. And until next time, we're here to help change the world together. I'm Ali Horia.